Good evening, everybody. Welcome back for another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, joined as always by my co-host, Julio Vela. How's your bracket looking, man?
I got a shot.
You got a shot?
I got a shot.
You actually picked Loyola Chicago in the Final Four?
I don't have a shot.
You don't have a shot.
God, why are you such a good lawyer, Jimmy? God.
I got to find out about your, how your gambling's going on, because I need to know whether you're going to show up every week.
Oh, man. Oh, I'll show up every week. I'll show up every week, just in a different suit.
Yeah. We got a great show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us from Restoring Justice, we have Drew Willey. Drew, thanks for joining the program.
Of course.
And Johnathon Shillings. Jonathan, appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You guys are dressed in the blue shirts this evening.
We got to support it.
Yeah, you almost look like you're supporting UCLA in the tournament. You got the baby blue and the gold going on.
Isn't that crazy? Blue Devil, Restoring Justice.
Right.
Whoa. Hey, Longhorn. Hey, we have three Longhorns here.
We are in the round tonight, ladies and gentlemen, so you may notice a little bit different camera shots from what you might be used to. We kind of changed things up a little bit. Want to, give you a little different angles of what we look like. There you can see us sitting at the circle here, all ready to talk for the next hour with Drew and Jonathan about their, what's the best way to call it? A charitable organization.
Yeah, it's a 501c3.
501c3. We're gonna find out all about what they're doing with their program. We're gonna talk with Drew a little bit about some things going on in his personal life. Not too much though, because can't get too far into it, but we'll try and explore as much as we can. We'll open up the phone line. 713-807-1794 will be the number. We'll open those up probably around 8:30. We'll also take your questions and comments on Twitter at HCCLA_TV. So hit us up on there. Guys, Drew, tell us about how you started this charitable organization. What was the impetus behind it?
Yeah, when I came out as a solo practitioner, I committed myself to indigent defense, and people knew that in my circle. And so I'd start getting calls about these clients whose court-appointed attorneys weren't doing much for them. Mm-hmm. And I quickly realized if I truly wanted to be committed to indigent defense in the way that I was called to, I needed to start a nonprofit because the need is just too great with the amount of people that are falling through the cracks in Harris County's court-appointed indigent defense system. So luckily, I have a accounting background, IRS background, let me file, with no money. Apparently, other nonprofits start with a good seed money, but
but you got it off the ground with nothing.
We're getting it off the ground with nothing. So the 501c3 paperwork went through, and me and Jonathan have been trying to fundraise to officially launch. We've been taking a few cases. Basically, for clients to qualify, they've got to be indigent and they've got to have inadequate court-appointed counsel. And so we've got our objective and subjective criteria to determine that, and then we then give them a holistic client-centered attorney, as well as we're trying to institute doing the holistic approach with a social worker.
Now, what does that mean, holistic approach? Because you hear that word thrown out a little bit, and some people would say it sounds kind of hokey. It might sound a little flaky.
I think some HCCLA fellow brothers have termed it as hippy-dippy.
Hippy-dippy, touchy-feely kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My DO gives me all the drugs I want. My DO, I tell you, I gave the MDs up a long time ago. No. Sometimes.
But no, you're right. The term holistic can mean a lot of different things, especially in the legal world. Sometimes it means you're wrapping around immigration, family, every piece. In the Christian world, it means a lot of different things. What we're talking about specifically is actually what the Harris County Public Defenders does. In their terminology of holistic criminal defense, it was formed and established by the Bronx Public Defenders in New York. And so what that means is providing social services, the care. As y'all know, criminal defense is so much more than the legal work. Talking to families, writing letters to employers about job perspectives, right?
It puts the counseling part of attorney and counselor sometimes into the whole thing.
Yeah, so we'll actually bring in a professional who knows that field and that industry in social work, and that's our term of holistic. It's really just wraparound services while they're facing the criminal case.
So Jonathan, tell us about your everyday life with the organization.
Everyday life, majority of the time is trying to convince people and raise awareness why restoring justice is so important. And I was telling Drew earlier behind, when we was off camera, that one of the biggest difficulties is trying to explain to somebody who doesn't know anybody who's ever been incarcerated, or personally or indirectly, and explain to them how our services are meet those needs. And so daily, those are my biggest tasks: recruiting and raising awareness to those individuals.
You know, in Houston, often individuals who aren't involved or work or have interaction with the criminal justice system, you know, there's something like 4 or 5 million in the metro area. There's about 1 million, I would guess, underground, Gotham City, okay, where we don't interact with, and it's in plain view, but we don't encounter on a daily basis. We don't think about the things that this group of people need. Oftentimes, you know, a group of individuals won't know a felon, won't know anybody who's a felon at all.
Right.
But the guy who's sitting on trial, or gal who's sitting on trial, or the person who's sitting on trial, they don't know anybody who's not a felon.
Yeah.
And the life and the struggles that they go through. There's a big cross on your shirt, on both of your shirts. What does that mean? And how are you putting the cross, and how does that relate to you, the nonprofit?
I can tell you personally, it's just the cross is only Jesus has the love, right? The cross represents Christianity in our organization, and only the love of Christ and the power of his love can reach down and help these people up. And that's the only way we can do it, because you take somebody who's a non-believer or they're set in their own ways, they've been sheltered from any of that, they don't care. So it takes a real unique person with a real soft heart who's been touched by the hand of God to even consider even thinking in that direction. And so we know through that love only can this organization grow, and can we get individuals to help. And so to me, that's my perspective of what the cross is.
Now, John, when did you decide to make this decision in your life? Now, okay, and I think everybody, if you're going to choose a path, you're either born into it and you go through it since birth, or at some point in time you reach a crossroads in your life where you make that decision. Did you make that decision as part of meeting Drew, or was it before, or how did you come to decide that restoring justice versus any of the other nonprofits that you could have done? How did you come to this one, and why?
How did I come to restoring justice?
And why?
And why? Okay, so to backtrack a little bit, it's a really good story. So prior to restoring justice, I was incarcerated for 5 years for something that I didn't have to be incarcerated, but I didn't have the money, I didn't have the resources to really pull me out of that situation, and so out of fear and the advice from my attorney at the time, he was like, "Man, this is the best thing for you to do." I pled guilty, and I went to prison, and through that, I spent 5 years in prison, and I'm seeing people, including myself, who are beat down, broken, no family. And when you talk to them, they're all normal people like us, and we all have similar sorrows, similar struggles. And you're just like, man, dude, if you just had a little love and a little help, man, you wouldn't be in this situation. And that's when, you know, Christ stepped into my life, because he told me, you're nothing without me.
In the prisons, are there study groups, Bible groups, support groups for Christianity or other religions too, or how?
There is, and sometimes they're well supported, sometimes they're not. Mine personally happened is because I was like, man, I'm going through a lot, but I've always kept a good attitude, so I was like, I'm a strong individual. And I'll never forget, I was sitting, they don't have benches where in the county, they have toilets. And so I'm sitting on the toilet acting like it's a bench. And and I'm just sitting there, and I just felt like God inserted this word into my heart. I didn't know it was God at the time. And it was so clear. It says, you're not strong, you're weak. And I'm just like, whoa.
Damn, wow.
And coming from somebody, I've lived a life that's kind of, from the outside looking in, considered strong. But the way that it resonated with me, I was like, man, what does that mean? And he basically spoke to me and said that you've always had these run-ins with the law, and you've always looked good doing it, but you're weak because you couldn't get out if you wanted to.
You had to surrender.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was crazy because I didn't know anything about Jesus. I didn't know anything about God. But I sat down and I kind of put my head down and I was like, man, you're right. And if you don't help me, I'm going to die in this place.
Well, where did you learn about that? I mean, where did you learn about Jesus? I mean, why would it be Jesus that's speaking to you? Or
Okay, so listen, it was so crazy. And like I think back to these moments every time. So from like 5 years prior, like people would always come up to me and like, man, you know, Jesus loves you. I'm like, man, who are you coming to me?
Touching me.
Yeah, exactly. And I know my first day getting into the county and going up to my cell, this guy named Isaac Smith, I'll never forget him. He had a capital murder case, but man, he just shined like a light walking through the tank. And he came up to me. He was like, "Hey, brother, I want to let you know Jesus loves you." And I'm like, "Dude, what is wrong with you?"
Dead man walking.
But yeah, exactly. But what I've learned over time is like these were seeds getting deposited, and it's just when it happened to me, there was no question about it. I just knew what it was. And
Wow.
yeah, and so from then on, that's when my heart changed and started. Instead of working on in here, I started becoming concerned with out here around me, and trying to help individuals get what I have, which is true freedom and love in Christ. And then through conversation with them, I realized, man, everybody's broken in some other way. And only through that love could they change.
You mean you're trying to spread God in the county jail?
Yeah.
Is that tough or what?
Well, and I guess, look, let's be honest here. I mean, the practice of criminal defense and law in general does not lend itself to proselytizing, shall we say. So, I mean, you've got to run into a bunch of critics, especially amongst your own peers, like, you know, I ain't seen God and Jesus in a courtroom kind of stuff. I see a lot of lawyers, but I don't see this. I mean, how is it for you dealing with that, both of y'all? Because, I mean, I can see the argument on the other side of, look, you know, criminal justice shouldn't be just relegated to one belief, one faith. Mm-hmm. It should be open to all, and we shouldn't be pressing people to find, you know, hope and justice and good representation only through Jesus and the Christian faith. So to that extent, how do you deal with what I'm sure is probably a chorus of vocal critics in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, to start off, is this justice system that we face every day is completely a fear-based system, right? So the whole system is set up as anti-love. Mm-hmm. And so to come in and speak love to where everyone else is operating, and a lot of criminal defense attorneys, they just try to manage the fear, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we flip it on its head and bring in love, we could actually restore justice, right? Speaking to what you asked about specifically Christians or Christ, you know, Jesus, the very first time he stood up in public ministry to say who he was, it was, I came for freedom for the prisoners and to set the oppressed free. And he said to give sight for the blind and good news to the poor. We've got 4 out of 5 criminal cases as indigent defendants. That's poor. Mm-hmm. So you've got 3 of the 4 mandates that Christ literally said he came for, being that love into that. So restoring justice, like, we have absolutely zero qualifications of you have to be a Christian to join us, you have to be a Christian to get our service. Like, we're not forcing Christianity. We just say, hey, Jesus is here for freedom. We're going to fight for freedom, and we're going to try to change a fear-based system into a love-based system. And that's it.
You straight walking the line. You straight. Jesus said, "Go forth and represent and and free the oppressed and feed the poor and represent them." You straight walking the line. Okay, so why Jesus? I mean, this is just you, and you feel that this is just your calling, or why? What made you? And I asked the same question, Jonathan. I ask you, why Jesus and when Jesus?
So for me, the only way, I had a very privileged background. The only way my lens was ever focused to see the hurt of the oppressed, the hurt of the poor, was because of my belief in Christ. A personal relationship with Christ said, you need to go look at these people. And he had to physically smack me over the head through an experience in law school with a death penalty case of truly seeing what's really going on in our system to the poor, to the minorities, to the mentally ill, right? And if I hadn't had a personal relationship with Christ, I never would have seen it. So for me, that was my lens, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that has to be the lens for everyone, but I know for my story, he was the only one that got me here.
Were you raised as a Christian, or is this decision that came later on in life and you decided to take Jesus as your Lord and Savior?
I was raised as a Christian, you know, and it was very kind of surface level, right? Like the Christianity means listen to a good message, protect your family, right? It wasn't until I branched out and really sought Christ for myself when started questioning, well, hang on, is this right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I read a book, Case for Christ. It's perfect for lawyers, right?
Did they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt?
Even for the atheist lawyers?
Yeah, I'm not
I mean, and that just convinced me that this is the answer, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt for me.
Right.
You know, and yeah. And that was
okay, so you're funded by donations or grants, and or just donations and or both?
Yeah, we're both. You know, just to be honest about who we are, we've had some trouble getting going, right? Because the folks that kind of come from my background who are living, you know, kind of the Christianity means protection only for us and our family. It only means the surface level stuff. We've had a little bit of struggle of expressing the needs in the criminal justice system to them. So grants have been a little slow. Plus, as you said, the colleagues in the social justice world kind of come with a skeptic view sometimes. So we are in a soft opening where we're taking referral cases. But as soon as we get enough money to officially launch, we're going to have a full-time attorney who's taken, you know, the caseloads, at least 120 cases a year, to try to go into the courts where the judges are appointing the most overloaded court-appointed attorneys. And so we'll take some of those cases.
You know, they have similar, for example, adoption agencies or other, I know this through PEP and these kind of things. My partner's involved in providing funds to nonprofits. Some of them involve let's say, adoptions or care for individuals who've gone through significant trauma, and they have lawyers. And upon inquiry, those lawyers for those nonprofits, their starting salaries are somewhere between 30 and then they cap at somewhere close to 60. And they have to handle a variety of cases. Do you, in your holistic approach, anticipate handling a variety of different types of cases? We know you'll have a social worker to find, or some sort of social individual to find services for people, but will you just focus, and do you just focus on criminal defense, or do you handle collateral issues that we also see in our legal profession, such as immigration or family law or those types of cases?
Right. So as we define holistic, it's for indigent criminal defense, and that's because there are other legal aid organizations doing other things. Across the country, there are only 4 other organizations doing indigent trial level criminal defense. So the need, like everyone kind of assumes, well, they're legal aid doing legal work for the poor, right? Not an indigent defense. There's none of these.
I can imagine when you're sitting in front of a room of 15 or 30, presumably white Republican donors, and asking them for money to defend your cause, they look at you and say, how are you overcoming that? And how do you find the stamina to persist?
You kind of, hit the nail on the head on the difficulty in this. The stamina only comes from my faith, right? And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't keep going, because we do get smacked in our face with the bricks of the conservative white views towards the criminal justice system. I mean, I've even had people, telling me that you can't utter mass incarceration in those scenarios, and it's like, well, how can you argue with mass incarceration?
Right.
Yeah.
So let's switch to Jonathan. Jonathan, how has restoring justice intertwined with your life?
Intertwined with my life? Well,
What do you do with it? I mean, are you just you're the muscle guy? You're the show. What do you do?
far from that. How I turned 20 in my life really helped me put I guess, I don't know how to explain it, because what we're doing now is something I've been doing already.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it helps me, I guess, officialize it, right? It's making it official. So now instead of me just helping people under, the love of God, me just helping people, now we have an actual umbrella that covers it, saying this is what we do, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hurtful, because I told you before, the reason I keep going is because when I was gone, I've met hundreds and hundreds of men and women, mostly men, who are never coming home. 18 years old, and they made a mistake and kind of got jammed up doing something, and in their ignorance, now they got a life sentence. And then I met people who've been down 20, 35 years, and they don't come up for parole for another 20 for a mistake they made when they was 18. But when you hear the story, they don't have any family, they don't have any support, and they were just got out of foster care and living on the streets. So they made it like Lee.
Right.
And so knowing that I've met so many of these people, I'm just like, no, I just got to keep doing it,
Do you talk to are you part of the holistic approach? Does he interact or part of the team?
Yeah, so the third piece of the holistic approach is kind of the heart of Christ in it, right? Adelphoi is the Greek term for brothers and sisters in Christ. And so every client gets an Adelphoi who goes, if they're in jail, they'll go to jail. If they're out while in bond, we've got a guidebook that they read through, and they pray together. They, encourage each other. And so, yeah, Johnathon's been the coordinator of that program and pairing donor volunteers with clients, because that's the only way people are going to see the need in this system, so that we can try to fix it.
I want to talk about the need a lot, but we have an eager beaver on the phone line here, so I want to jump in and we'll open it up. We're about 8 minutes shy of 8:30, so that's close enough in my book. So let's take our first call for the evening. Hello, thanks for calling Reasonable Doubt.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I had a question about how you find clients. You did mention that you were going to go to the courts, but are you going to be finding clients through advertising or checking in with lawyers who are not doing an adequate job in taking their cases, or how can clients find you? And then my second question was, how big is your team? And you mentioned that everybody gets paired with somebody, and I think you mentioned there's a social worker. Do you offer other assistance for people that are dealing with criminal cases? And I'll take your answer off the air. Thank you.
You got the floor, man.
Yeah. So her first question was, how do clients hear about us? They can call us at 8447-FREE-ME.
What about like that's a great number. I was going to say 1-800 like Jesus Justice or something.
That's a good one.
Yeah, limited options. But, we also do know where the problem courts are, right? We know who the problem attorneys are. So when we're able to be fully operational, we're going to be able to go, and we know exactly what holdovers and what courts these guys, and it's going to be a flood, right? So that's one unique thing about a nonprofit. We're not ever concerned with finding clients. We know exactly where they are.
Are you limiting the type of criminal cases to felonies, misdemeanors, or both? And if you are taking both, do you feel that's going to be a challenge?
So the nice thing is, it's almost like the maturity of the Adelphoi who's donating the legal fees dictates the maturity of the case, right? So the amount that they're donating is determined by case level. So we're not limiting to types of cases, because as Jesus preaches, everybody is redeemable. I mean, I've had a lot of people say you need to limit to a certain type of case so that you can be marketable, it's trendy, whatever. No. We're taking murders, we're taking SOs, we're taking...
Yeah, I don't know that criminal defense is marketable or trendy.
The drugs and the human trafficking now.
Gotham City, man. It's Gotham City.
I mean, you talk about the need. I mean, we have an overwhelming need for indigent defense, not just here in Harris County, but all across the country. And, we have very good lawyers who take on court-appointed cases. in the federal courts, we have some of the best lawyers around who are on the CJA panel taking cases. And, they are a complement to the public defender's office. On the flip side, in state court, we have a mix of very, very good lawyers taking criminal appointments and some lawyers who really just mail it in. And there's a couple of those in federal court. I don't think you find them in near the percentage that you do in the state court side, but you have those that will fight as hard as they were if they were retained on a case, even if they're appointed. And then you have those that do the bare minimum. And I've always said that the way you could really turn this on your head is if you had an organization like yours who was well funded, who was able to just go in and say, we don't care, we're funded, and we're going to do whatever we can to help these people. It would wreck the system, because what people don't understand, what the people who are out there, who, as you described, Julio, the lily white Republican base who doesn't maybe deal with this on a daily basis, the times they do have to deal with it, the times they do have a family member that gets arrested, or they themselves have to go through the system, you know what the first thing they say to me when they come to hire me, or to any other lawyer that they come to hire? This ain't America. This ain't the America I know. Well, no, it's not the America you know, because you've been living in a different America for 99% of the time. And you don't see what goes on day to day. You don't see what happens down at the courthouse, and what happens to people who don't have means who come through the system, and how they get treated, how they aren't represented the same. And so, there's an opportunity here, I feel like, if y'all can get the funding. And one of the things, I don't know, have y'all thought about employing law students to help out with this?
Yeah, we take interns every summer, actually.
Well, but I mean, even beyond just interns, I mean, you can get, as a third-year lawyer, you can get a bar card and try cases if you have a licensed lawyer sitting next to you.
Right.
And I mean, what do we complain about as a profession? What do we constantly complain about as a profession? That lawyers don't have on-the-job training. That you come out as a third-year lawyer and you're completely worthless. And big firms pay people who have never even questioned a witness or tried a case or done anything. They pay them $160,000 a year right out of law school. Or you got people now hanging up their shingle because there are no places of employment, and they're just, there's no barrier to entry in criminal defense. So they're just taking cases, much to the detriment, I think, of clients. And if they could hook on with an organization like yours, get some experience, have a more experienced lawyer sit with them. I can see so many possibilities for this.
Yeah.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, and just plug to the South Texas new criminal defense clinic. Like,
right.
What they are doing is creating the exact kind of lawyers that we also want to create.
Right.
So it's going to take multi-angle views. And I do want to back up, sorry, just real quick, one thing you touched on before.
No, absolutely.
I don't mean to question court-appointed attorneys by what we're doing. There are great attorneys. I don't care how good of an attorney you are. If you're taking 500 felonies, you're not going to be able to provide adequate counsel to that person. So it's not anti-court-appointed attorney. It's just the system is overloading them, and if there are defendants falling to those cracks, like, that's the slack we got to pick up and flip that on its head, right?
Yeah.
So for restoring justice, a client or somebody, a potential client or family member of a potential client calls you and says, hey, I need my pro bono lawyer, or I can't afford an attorney. You say, cool, come by the office? Or you say, fill out how does that work?
No, we have an whole evaluation. So we have a questionnaire, and first, obviously, it's what's their name, anytime a new client calls, but then we pull up on the clerk's website who their court-appointed attorney is, and then we pull the first step. The Texas Indigent Defense Commission publicly reports how many cases you take. So the first objective criteria we look to is their attorney overloaded? Do they take more than TIDC's recommended caseloads? And in Harris County, 75% of indigent cases go to attorneys who exceed TIDC's recommended caseload. So if you're indigent, you've got a 1 in 4 shot of having an attorney who who merely has adequate time to spend on your case for you.
So the first initial screen is, do you have an attorney that's overloaded? Then do you say, what happens when they are overloaded? What happens when that attorney is not overloaded? What's the next step?
So the next step, when they are overloaded, we'll go through some other objective criteria and subjective criteria. Objective is kind of background on the attorney, right? Like if they maybe just, I hesitate to say this, but if they maybe came straight just from the prosecutor's office, right? Like maybe that's not quite the best. Or if they've got, reprimands, whatever. If they truly are bad. But then more subjective criteria is like, how are they doing with communication with the family? How are they doing with communication with the client? Have they visited the client?
Right.
That kind of stuff.
And if they're not overloaded, do you cease the chart, or do you also further inquire, and then make like an exception or something to the rubrics?
Yeah, so we'll do a holistic kind of view, right, of it, and make a determination case by case. The tough thing right now is, our barrier is not if people meet the qualifications. The barrier is are we as an organization overloaded with our current resources? Because we can't, I've had some that, we've got like 3 first-degree felonies, right? We just can't take a client with 3 first-degree felonies right now. We just don't have the resources.
And so then you earmark or not. So he passes the first criteria. Okay, he's overloaded. You seem like a great potential client that we can help. Then you look at resources, right? Is that the next step? And then you you talked about designating resources to the case, or are those, could a donor say, I want this designated to so-and-so specifically, or is it put into a general fund, and from there you're saying, we have enough money to defend this case, or we don't?
Right. Usually it's more the general fund. A donor doesn't know someone and they've come in. It's not in any sense of the word trying to skirt around. It's like mom can't call and for their kid, they're going to donate through our organization, right? It's not just getting around private retained rates or whatever. So once we take them, as long as we have the resources, then they get a retained attorney at their next, court setting, if not before.
Do you have a plan or an exit plan in the event that during the course of a representation, you're out of funds, for example?
Well, so that's kind of the beauty for criminal defense attorneys in this mission, right? We're not paying private retained rates because that would just be an impossible task. It's state rates, yet the state rates are at Texas Indigent Defense Commission's suggested hours per case level. So as court-appointed attorneys, when we're fighting judges because they won't pay us for out-of-court hours, right? We don't have to fight that if you take a case through us. We pay upfront flat fee for that suggested number of hours. So you're getting state rates, but it's more than you're getting from the judges. Plus you're getting, the upfront flat fee that we like to get. And so defense attorneys who are providing that expert service, they actually have an incentive, even though it's a 10th, if not more, of their usual rates.
Right.
It's still better for them to take the case than the judges are paying, which is a whole nother problem.
Yeah.
But
and if you're able to dispose of the case before the commission's predicted hours on this type of case level, is it just go back into the pot?
No, I mean, it's a flat fee. So it's an average, right? So you take another case, it's probably going to take more hours, right? Mm-hmm. So the flat fee is a flat fee, and the attorney.
So the commission that is per grade level of offense, they've actually said this should probably take about this amount of hours.
Yeah, so that was actually the way that TIDC got to their caseload recommendations. That same report, it's actually like this thick when they actually tell you that you should really only be taking, 120 state jail felonies, I think. The way they got to that number is they had a couple different metrics to say you should be spending, to be adequate, a certain number of hours per offense level. So we dug into that and pulled those suggested hours out.
So one capital murder.
What's the suggested hour capital murder?
One capital murder.
I don't know. Restorative justice doesn't take capital murder cases right now.
We
don't have
not
a
the
capital
murder.
division.
The man does God's work, all right?
There are other organizations that
We're not quite full Jesus yet.
yeah.
We're not full Jesus yet.
So then you fight the case. Have you had any cases to disposition? Have you had any cases to trial by verdict?
We haven't had trial by verdict yet. We've had sentencing hearings. Dispositions for sure.
How long has Restoring Justice been around?
You know better than me. Just since the end of 2016, is that right?
Yeah, November 2016.
That's awesome. That's
Slowly
awesome.
but surely.
How long have you been involved with the organization?
June, I think June 27th or just something like that, about 9 months.
How'd y'all meet?
All right, great story. I'm gonna tell you. So, Drew volunteered for this program called PEP,
Say the full name, y'all.
the Prison Entrepreneurship Program,
Yeah.
which happened to be a program that I was a part of for quite a few years. And so, the day I come home, which happens to be my daughter's birthday, June 7th, Drew submits a job description to his network, and he sent it to the CEO, Bert Smith, of the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. And the day I got home, which happened to be my birthday, which the day he submitted the job description, Bert was like, "Here, Jonathan, this might fit you." And so from then on, I went through a series of interviews with Drew and just
Objective and subjective criteria.
yeah, exactly. and that's how I came into Restoring Justice.
Did you develop the objective and subjective criteria?
I did.
Is that part of things that has to be in the bylaws of a nonprofit?
No.
Your own internal checks.
We're striving to be very accountable and transparent. So everything we do, there's a third party basis for what we're doing.
Yeah. And do you do anything else other than Restoring Justice?
Well, Restoring Justice takes up about 98% of my time. But also, I also have dreams of owning my own barbershop. And so
Awesome.
that's here in the near future, distant future. But so I also go to school as well to get my full-time barber license so I can eventually open my own shop.
That's awesome.
Jonathan, tell them about the jail relief and the Liberator.
Okay, so check this out. So this need is so people get out of Harris County Jail, y'all know, at crazy hours in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, they don't have a ride home. Buses don't run. Trains don't run. And I don't know if y'all been out there. It's kind of scary at that time of night. And so, and so we was sitting. Drew had an idea of like, man, let's see what we can do to, cater to that need right there. And so at one of our church advisory board meetings, we kind of sat around a table like this and started discussing ways we can address it. And so we have a truck that was given to us that we painted, and it's going to become our ministry vehicle.
Nice.
And so we name it the Liberator. And so this truck
Is it blue and gold?
Look for it April 14th in the art car parade.
Yeah.
Nice.
Seriously. And it's an old school Suburban. It has praying hands on the front, and on the side of it has a dove representing freedom and all types of abstract words and painting: freedom, hope, mercy. Our logo on the back, and guess who done it? A guy who just got out of prison.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and one of PEP brothers, and so he got out. He painted it for us, and so what we're going to do now, as the Spirit leads us, we got a whole bunch of donations that were given to us, and so we're going to meet men and women outside the Harris County Jail, give them some resources that we have as they need it, and as the Spirit leads us, give them a ride home. And on the ride home, volunteers that are with us, we're going to minister to them, and we have resources from other nonprofits that we are connected with to help them really just get back on their feet from that release.
Yeah, like job readiness nonprofits, housing nonprofits.
Yeah, clothes. There's so many organizations out there that help people getting out that they really don't know about it. So we're gonna help them with that.
So it's a straight Restoring Justice Liberator.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's blue and gold. That's or no, it's a
multicolored.
variety.
It's all types.
So what are you guys gonna have in there? Like Bibles
Sounds like
and
the
lemonade
vehicle
and
that,
stuff?
sounds like the vehicle that Captain America should be.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Restoring Justice Liberator.
That's awesome.
So really just the basic needs. Somebody's been locked up. Say he was locked up 6-9 months fighting his case in the county. Who knows what happened to your stuff? You don't know. And so when you come home, your basic necessity is like underwear, or socks, or even toothbrush and toothpaste. Like, you know, we take advantage of it because it's there every day. Somebody getting out of jail, they don't even have money to buy it. So those basic needs, we're going to meet them, and we're going to have little care packages ready for them to help them with that.
Were y'all soliciting donations just from random groups and such? And
primarily, we're asking to contact congregations, right? Because it's the dual purpose, right? Like, why conservative Christians have the money? If we can change their hearts and connect them, you know, then.
Gee, I don't know any large churches here.
you know,
but donate.
At the same time, I think there's. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat.
Are you a Democrat?
I'm a Democrat.
Say it again. Say it again.
I'm a Democrat. But look, that I would donate to something like this on a cause. If I just recently got a good client and I had a little bit to give, I would give.
Oh, was that this morning, right?
Hey, well, this afternoon. No, I'm kidding. But I would, and so you know, I think there's a lot of liberals out there who are Christians who would donate to things like that, man. I think they would.
So you'll be our outreach.
75 is kind of steep, bro. 75 a year is kind of steep. So what is this? Okay, so you're out for membership programs to donors, or I mean, is that how it works? I mean,
Yeah, so
or you get into the organization, or what happens? How does that?
Yeah, so it's a multi-step. The initial engagement with us is become an ambassador, and that's $75 a year donation. Our website, like every click on our website is going to take you to ask you to do that. And then once they are engaged, then they'll become that Adelphoi level where they're actually donating the state rate legal fees, where they'll get to meet with a client and volunteer a little bit as well.
Well, they get a little bit of interaction. Does the highest donor get the coolest case? How does that work?
Well, it's by offense level. So, our first degree felony level, the suggested hours at state rates takes $5,000. So if you're donating
First degree felony.
$5,000?
$5,000.
Isn't that crazy? The state rate, what Harris County is paying, compared to TIDC's adequate hours, plus a little bit for the social work piece, is $5,000. Wow. Now that's another issue with Harris County's pay schedule, but because we're being transparent and accountable, we're not going to pay more than that. Yeah. And you know, is that enough for an attorney to be adequate? Probably up for debate. Harris County probably needs to pay for more, but at this point as a nonprofit, that's not for us to say or determine.
And so is that one way that you calculate how many first degrees that you could have, depending on the amount of first degree donors that you have in your membership or in your ambassadorship?
Correct.
Is that how?
Correct. Yeah, it will once we're.
And so I want to go back to this 5,000 thing because, well, I mean, not every case is alike, and they're trying to shoehorn a max rate into what a standard rate is for every case.
Right.
I mean, if it's a case that involves DNA and forensics and all sorts of stuff, I mean, that's a ton of hours. Mm-hmm. Let's set aside the experts. I know you're having your own issue with that, but which we can talk about to some degree. But I mean, even look, if you break it down to $100 an hour, which I would argue is if you got a really good lawyer charging $100 an hour, that's a damn good deal.
Right.
Okay, and $5,000 is nothing, even at $100 an hour.
What's that? 50 hours? Math's terrible.
Yeah.
Is it 50 times 100?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not going to get. I mean, some of these cases take twice that in hours.
How are you gonna? Yeah. How are you gonna do that? Have you tried that?
Well, I mean, guys, like every first degree felony getting a court-appointed attorney is making a small fraction of that.
That's true.
It's crazy.
That's wild. That's wild. When you put the numbers out in the open, that's wild.
I mean, you do the numbers because some of those when you run that report, the report also includes how much these attorneys are getting paid.
Right.
So there's a guy last year, 7 capital cases and like over 400 felonies. And you do the division on how much he's getting paid per capital. I mean, you're just not not doing any kind of adequate work.
Yeah, it can't be. Let's take another phone call here. Hello, thanks for calling Reasonable Doubt. Hello. Hello. Beeler. Anybody there? Hello.
Jonathan, when
Try again.
have you been a part of some? Okay, who's the lawyer? You're the lawyer. You're an amazing lawyer. Are you the lawyer who's doing the cases now, or do you have other people?
I'm the lawyer on some. We've got contract basis.
That's
attorneys.
awesome.
So so again, we've got objective and subjective
Right.
criteria for attorney at being adequate, right? So engagement in HCCLA is one of our criteria, right? So
That's awesome.
we've got contract attorneys right now until we can hire full time and keep it in house.
And have you interacted with some of the clients?
I have actually having a brother I was in the death row with, and I can't give all the information, but when I went to go see him, you know, y'all dealt with people before, and Drew was like, man, he's a good kid, just made a mistake, and I'm like, all right, well, I've been in prison before, and I met plenty of these good kids, I'm gonna go find out.
Yeah.
When I went there, and I was like, golly, this is a good kid.
Oh man.
And but he was looking at so much time, and I'm
Right.
like, man, we got to get this guy out of here, man.
Right.
And I'm sitting there talking to him, and he had a similar background as mine. You know, parents weren't really there, unstable, no father figure to look up to, really no guidance. And so I see how he went to the streets, and so just seeing that personally, man, I was like, man, I got to help this guy. So as soon as he got out, try to get him to take him out to eat, but he was trying to transition in the world, kind of. So I didn't get to do that, but I got him some clothes, got him some shoes,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I've got to deal with a client personally, and I love it because it brings me back to where I was, and seeing them gives me hope because I know where I was and where I am now.
How old were you when you went inside?
Just turned 23.
Oh man. That's when I got married.
Yeah.
I'm 34 now. I got married at 23. That's
Yeah.
young. I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
I knew nothing.
You still know nothing.
Let's
be honest.
That's why I like to hang out.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently the phone company has come and fixed our phone wires here. So let's try this again. Hello, thanks for calling Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah, guys, I just watch public access TV. I don't have a whole lot of money. I don't understand. Is $5,000 a lot, a little? Y'all are sounding like that's a little, but that sounds like a whole lot to me. For 50 hours of work, that's more than I make in 6 months. I don't understand what all do y'all need to do for more money?
Yeah, great point. I mean, it's all about perspective, right? I mean, in my world, I don't. And look, I don't think that's a lot of money. I saw something the other day that basically said, why do lawyers, especially self-employed lawyers, why do they charge so much? Well, look, if you're self-employed, you don't have health insurance. You got to pay for your own health insurance. So, I mean, you're essentially running a business at the same time. So it's not like you're taking all that money. You've got to pay expenses. You've got to pay overhead. You've got to pay staff. You've got to pay a lot of things for that money that you're charging a client. And so, that's why lawyer rates are typically pretty high. I mean, it's a professional rate. I mean, you look at what a plumber charges. Plumbers charge $120, $150 an hour.
Master plumbers more.
Right.
Yeah.
Electricians who come out to your house. I mean,
A masseuse, how much you pay for that?
Right. Any specific trade who comes out.
I paid $500 last time. I kid.
That's a whole nother story.
So I want to share my experience with from a court-appointed attorney to a paid attorney.
Yeah.
Okay, so for a year and a half, I was facing a crime, and my court-appointed attorney was like, look, man, 30 years is your best bet. If you go to trial, they're going to try to give you life. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, can we just talk? Well, I don't got time to talk right now. I'll talk to you next court date. And so for a year and a half, this was going on. 3 weeks before trial, thank God, my mom and my stepdad, they come to visit me, and they're like, Jonathan, we're going to get you an attorney. They retained an attorney for $25,000.
Oh.
The day before trial at the pre-trial conference, he came back and was like, man, the case is thrown out. And it's just that, but because I had money to pay an attorney at that time, it was a completely difference.
Well, but I also think, look, there are some lawyers, regardless of what the rate they're getting, it's really about a personal pride thing. I truly believe that some people take more pride in their work than others. Some of us have the benefit of being able to straddle both worlds, of being both a retained lawyer and getting good rates while also being court appointed. I mean, I do both. 95% or more of my work is retained at a very, very good rate, okay? I'm not going to make any bones about that. I get paid a very good rate for what I do.
So you'll be an ambassador.
But
$5,000.
but I'm also on the CJA panel in criminal court, and they just raised that rate from
140 now, right?
It's 140 now. You know, and I'll tell you what, I go in there and you can ask any of the people that I go into federal court with. I mean, I've gotten several cases that I've gotten thrown out at the pretrial detention hearings or the probable cause hearings because I go in there and I read all the stuff that I get, and it's a pride thing for me. And we're there for 6-7 hours just on a probable cause hearing, on an initial appearance. And you know, I won one case on identity recently because the government failed to prove up identity on my client, and I forced them to have an identity hearing.
It's the wrong guy.
Right? They just couldn't identify.
Right.
They didn't even
Or
get
couldn't,
the officer to identify him on the stand. You know, and so look, I think it's a personal pride thing. And you know, if you don't want to take the time to try and get the best results, that's on you at the end of the day. And unfortunately, in our profession, you're hurting somebody else by doing it. You know, and it's like the practice of medicine. The first rule: don't do harm to the patient. Mm-hmm. And in the practice of law, the first rule is don't do harm to the client. And unfortunately, you have a lot of lawyers that they just don't follow that rule. I mean, you look at some of the things they do, some of the things they say. I mean,
I also think that there's different times to apply pressure to in a case to make them fall over the edge, and sometimes that's right before the trial, and so it ain't gonna get any better than 30 when the district attorney is not feeling any heat. However, when you pass that point of no return and it's game on now, you got 2 months to trial, 3 months to trial. It's live and die scenario now. If you don't have that trust with your client, they're not going to trust you to take it to that next level.
And if the prosecutors know it's an attorney like you who's going to hold them to it,
right?
Or if it's someone who's
not
faking them,
yeah,
right. I mean, how would you have that trust? What ends up happening is you got people like you who will push it to the limit and then get blackballed for it.
Mm-hmm. Which is what's happening to you right now.
Talk to us about it and how that led to you restoring justice.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in the Times today.
Not because you have a New York Times bestseller.
I got a call from Reasonable Doubt. You know, all it took was to get into the New York Times. Just kidding. But yeah, no, there's because part of this, right? Even the low rates. Like,
look, we only invite those who make it on the front page of the New York Times. Okay?
That's a high bar.
I don't know if you realize the threshold to be a guest on the show, Drew. Okay?
I'm honored.
All right.
The photo was great.
Oh man. Yeah.
So you're out in Galveston. You're kicking butt. You're doing everything that you're supposed to, and then you get dumped on by some judge who says, "Hey, you're working too hard for these accused." What'd you do? What happened?
Well, it goes back to what you're saying. Like, I was working the cases because even though I wasn't getting paid, the rates that I should have been, I wanted the best results for my clients, and the prosecutors were given unreasonable offers. So I had to do the work, do the investigation, ask for investigation funds, do everything you need to do to prepare for a trial, and I worked out a great deal on the case that was highlighted in the article, right? And was doing it on a number of cases. And so there's a system that if you can't bond out in Galveston, right, you're
stuck.
Screwed. You're stuck. So I was actually trying to do investigation on those cases, asking for PR bonds, trying to actually fight the case, even though we were in this isolated event. And I physically got pulled off of cases.
You pulled off before disposition?
Before disposition,
Are
while
you
I was in
serious?
the middle. While I was in the middle. So, and then, right, so because I was working the cases, I'm going to be honest on any voucher I turn in on what it took to work a case. So because the vouchers were too high, according to the judge, right, they got slashed, and so then I stopped receiving appointments. And this amazing group, the Civil Rights Corps, has said, you know, you have a First Amendment right to speak up for clients in court. As defense attorneys, speaking up for the voiceless, right, you have a right to do that in court. And if you are going to be silenced for whatever reason, then that's unconstitutional.
That's an interesting approach to First Amendment law.
There you go.
That's a very interesting approach to it.
And so how did you slap this you suing the county, or is it Drew Willey versus
the judge? So it's
wow.
So it's yeah. So I'm the named plaintiff. I have an attorney. It is very nice to be a client.
Hey, what's going on with my case?
Yeah.
You know, lawyers are sometimes the hardest people to represent.
Oh man.
Right.
What stage are you in the proceedings?
So it got filed about a week and a half ago.
What relief are you asking for?
So as a judge, they're normally immune, right? But you can seek declaratory judgment. So there's no financial interest involved for anybody, very clearly. So it's a declaratory judgment seeking that I be reinstated to receive appointments so that I can go back to adequately advocating for my clients.
Were you actually kicked off the wheel or whatever they have down there?
I wasn't actually kicked off the entire wheel. There are 3 county courts. I still accepted cases from the other 2, but it was the one particular court that kind of like how they do in Harris County, right? I'm on the wheel in Harris County. I've received 3 cases in 2 years because, you know, the first time I turned in vouchers, I was told that county courts don't pay for out-of-court hours. And, you know, ironically, I happen to not receive any more appointments. It's the same kind of system of like, yeah, I'm on the wheel, but that the particular judge controls who takes the cases. And so that particular judge, you know, stopped appointing me.
Jeez.
Was it filed in federal court?
It was.
Wow.
We've run out of time.
Oh.
You guys have just we've flown through this last hour here. So great time, guys. I appreciate you coming on. You guys are gonna have to come back. You're gonna have to update us because I feel like there's so much more. We didn't even scratch the surface on a couple of things here.
Thanks for having us.
We're gonna wait for you to make the New York Times again, though. Before you come on. That's the rule. You're gonna have to make it, or at least on the Washington Post or something. But Johnathon Shilling, Drew Willey, appreciate y'all coming on. Julio, we'll be back next week.
Hook 'em horns.
Thanks, mate. Hook 'em.
Horns. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.